Welcome to episode number 3 of Weather and Climate Chat with Monsoon Mike Regensberger and KU meteorology professor Dr. Michael Davis. Dr. Davis, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of good insight and comments about our little program, so we're happy that you folks are listening. I guess you can blame what's going on outside on us. The past 2 weeks we did nothing but complain about how the weather was boring, and finally we got some action. So
yeah, we finally got what we were looking for,
Yeah.
although whether it came as a shock to some people may have been another story. But
well, it kind of did turn rather quickly. I mean, just last week the models weren't really implying much of anything was going to happen over the coming week, and then right around Sunday, Monday, we saw that it was going to get a little more active, and then sure enough, it did. Of course, this has been a very confusing week, to say the least, with what our friend Joaquin, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, is going to do. Any comments on that so far?
Joaquin was down by the Bahamas for
Right.
most of the week, and he didn't really move that much because of the trough that's essentially sitting over the southeast U.S. And you have another low pressure that's kind of towards east that's helping to steer it toward Florida, but just kind of caught in that, I guess, no man's land between
Right.
the low pressure and the trough, so it wasn't moving as much. But then all that warm water started to fuel Joaquin, and it really intensified and went from, I believe, a tropical storm on, was it Monday or Tuesday?
Right. I
To
believe.
a Category 4 yesterday.
Pretty quick. Yeah.
So that was a 48-hour, 72-hour period. And then Tuesday, all the weather models, and even in the early parts of Wednesday, were indicating that Joaquin was coming straight for us.
Right.
And it was starting to paint almost a pretty ominous picture of
Right.
what we might actually see. And then the models just kept trending further and further east because Joaquin looked like it was getting essentially too strong for itself.
Right.
And was in its own little environment and was not going to be relied on jet stream, that trough pushing it.
Right.
So it's essentially, I like what Henry Margossetti of AccuWeather said with, you could put a pebble in the stream and the stream will push the pebble.
Right.
But if you put a rock in the stream's not pushing that rock.
That's a very good analogy. Very good.
I liked it, and I
That's-
used it in meteorology this week. So.
That's a good one. Okay, well, let's back up a little bit. We're going to get back to Joaquin in more detail in a minute, but we should stress to the listeners right now that what they're seeing out their window this weekend really isn't related to Joaquin. This is related
No.
to the cold front that moved through a couple of days ago and a storm riding along that cold front, correct?
Yes, the
Yeah.
front passed, I believe it was Tuesday,
Late Tuesday and early Wednesday, yeah.
and it stalled out along the eastern
Ahead of that front, it was
seaboard.
pretty summer-like. We had 1 or 2 days where it felt like July again.
Yes.
Very
and-
muggy and steamy.
And now we're back to what we should be having.
Actually, a little below. We're a little below normal now.
That is correct.
Yeah, it's chilly out there. So yeah, what we're seeing now is related to the that, and then we had Joaquin to look at, and a lot of what we were looking at with Joaquin was how he was going to interact with the passing front and with would Joaquin be able to penetrate the ridge in the Atlantic and make that right turn? The Euro model, which actually performed very well with Sandy a number of years ago, had been pretty insistent all week that this storm was going to be a miss. But us weather folks it didn't really make sense to us at first because an East Coast landfall, it looked like it was going to get caught up in that jet stream and be pulled up to the coast.
And the other feature, too, with that was
Yeah.
the trough was going to break free from the jet stream. It's
Right.
what we call the cutoff low.
Right.
And when it gets separated, it's not going to be part of that rotation or
Right.
the jet stream anymore. So that could also help pull it toward
Right.
the west. And that never really occurred.
Yeah, but had that happened, and I hate to do a what if or coulda, woulda, shoulda, but the models the picture that the models were painting just a couple of days ago was almost borderline catastrophic. It would have taken it right up Chesapeake Bay, which would have been really bad.
Yeah, if it went up Chesapeake Bay, that would have been the worst case scenario for
Yeah.
us because we would have been on the right side of the storm,
Right.
which is the strongest part of it.
Right.
So we would be experiencing a lot of rain, a lot of wind, and a lot of damage
Right.
from the storm. Thankfully, it's not heading our way
Yeah.
at this point, and best case scenario is now emerging where it just stays
Right.
out to sea.
Now, that's not to say that this is going to be a pretty weekend by any shape or form. I mean, it's going to be a pretty kind of what you see is what you get weekend. Kind of dreary, kind of rainy. Gusty winds, too. There's going to be a pretty good pressure gradient going on. So actually the winds are going to pick up over the coming days, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it's going to be windy and rainy pretty much all weekend. And I'm never going to start questioning when we see the sun again.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess after 2 months of sun, we really can't complain too much.
And in this morning's daily brief, I mentioned that we shouldn't let our guard down because some of the models are still indicating that there could be a potential for it to make landfalls in the Carolinas.
Right.
But that seems remote at this point.
Yeah, let's mention that. I mean, the meteorologists love looking at this thing called, and it was the butt of some jokes this past week, the spaghetti plots or spaghetti models. It looks like literally strings of spaghetti. And slowly we've seen all those spaghettis going further and further east, but there's still one or two that want to go west. So what do you think about that? What are those one or two seeing?
My guess is that they must be seeing something in the trough still, or potentially the cutoff low just influencing Joaquin a bit more. The way how the models, the majority of them are bringing out to sea, though, they seem like the outliers.
Right.
So at this point, I don't think they are accurately depicting what's going on.
Right.
There's still a small chance.
Right.
But I got to go with the consensus, which is leaning out toward the Atlantic at this point.
And doesn't it have just getting into a little bit of the science behind the models, doesn't it also have to do a lot with how certain models have performed with tropical systems? I believe the one or two that have it going to the East Coast are not really known for their accuracy in tropical systems, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have models that tend to be performing well, and if they're performing well, those are the ones that usually get relied on. And if you have models that aren't performing well, then you put less credibility toward them and think that their solution is potentially not the correct one.
Right. Now, let's talk a little bit about this weekend. Like I said, most, if not all, of what we see this weekend will not be from Joaquin, except for maybe the wind. But what are we going to see this weekend? I mean, we still do have some flood potential because it rained quite a bit earlier this week. So we're going to get. What's your estimation for rainfall totals? But when this is all said and done.
I think we got at least another inch, maybe two out of the atmosphere before Sunday.
Right.
So as of today and tomorrow, I think we probably have another couple inches to look forward to, maybe even 3 or 4 in some isolated locations. But with the ground being saturated already, there's not much room for the water to go into the soil. So you're going to see the runoff and streams and creeks and other waterways start to rise as a result.
So that is good to keep an eye on for this weekend. And, of course, as they always say, hashtag turn around, don't drown. You see any flooded roadways, don't try to venture through it.
It only takes several inches of water to knock you off your feet and about 12 inches or so to lift a car.
Wow.
Water is a powerful force.
It is, definitely.
It usually gets underestimated, and then you get people that need help when their car gets washed away off the road.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we should also mention, if anybody's listening at the shore or plan to be going to the shore this weekend, although this might not be the best weekend to do any weekend fall shore trips, that the Joaquin will have an effect on beach erosion and rip currents? Okay.
With the strong northeasterly winds that are being projected and the very rough surf, you're going to have the dunes and the beaches suffer severe beach erosion.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind, and frankly, just stay out of the beaches.
Yeah.
There's no reason to go there this weekend unless you have a wedding or something going on down there. Then yes, go, but stay off the beaches.
Definitely
this
not the best
There'll
weekend.
Be better weekends to go to the beach.
That's a very good point, because sometimes you have these people that think it's a good time to do their surfing or whatever, or amateur photographers that want to be out there taking pictures and then wind up having to get rescued. So, and you're wasting somebody's time to have to go fish them out of the water. So don't do that, right?
Yes. You definitely use common sense.
Right. Unfortunately, some people don't have that, but that's definitely good to put out there. So anything else to throw out there about Joaquin, or do you think we covered it all with him?
I think we pretty much got most of it covered.
All right.
It's probably going to be sticking out to sea, and
Of course, follow
go.
both of our pages, Dr. Michael Davis's weather page and Monsoon Mike's weather headquarters for updates. If any of this changes, like we said, there was that 5 or 10% chance something could change.
yes.
And we'll put
While
that
remote, you should stay tuned.
always. Okay, putting Joaquin aside and putting this weekend's rain aside, when do we see some sun again? I looked, we might not really see some sun until maybe Tuesday at this point.
Yes, it's definitely not going to happen this weekend.
Right.
Probably not until we finally start clearing out the air, which won't be until Tuesday, like you said.
Yeah.
When we have some drier air moving in that can actually allow us to see that bright orb in the sky.
Right. And then it looks like temperatures fairly seasonal for the next week, although it looks like after Tuesday it might even go a little bit above seasonal again, I noticed.
With the temperatures being in the 50s
Yeah.
for this weekend, getting back into even the mid or upper 60s
Will
will
feel
be
warm. Yeah.
warm for us.
Very good. So, I guess nothing major that we see. Well, we didn't really see anything major at this point last week, but
And Joaquin pretty much dominated the weather
Done.
discussions for this week.
Absolutely. Do you think we have anything more exciting happen in October now that we're in October, or just
At least not that I've seen for
Right.
the foreseeable future. The tropics, I don't believe, have any sort of storm potential out there. There's a couple areas that bear some watching,
Right.
but nothing to the magnitude of the Category 4 storm that Joaquin is.
So the moral of the story was, that they always say getting too big for your britches is an old saying. I guess Joaquin, if he wanted to hit the U.S., he just got too big for his britches. He got shot up to a Category 4, and that pushed him out to sea.
Yes, when it started getting more and more powerful, that's when meteorologists like maybe he's going to get too big to
Right.
come in.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're seeing right now, or at least the model consensus is showing.
Why
us.
did he get so big? Was it the water temperature down there, or other things going on?
With the stationary motion that the
Right.
storm was pretty much going through, or very weak westerly or southwesterly movement,
No shear. Yeah.
you had a lot of warm waters sit on, and there was low wind shear, which is not very conducive for hurricane development.
Right.
But then there came a point where Joaquin was going to have to start moving because with all that essentially surf and turbulent ocean that's underneath him, he's bringing up colder water from below,
Right.
which is robbing him his fuel source.
Right. Very good. All right. Well, we're about 12 minutes in. We usually like to go to about 15, 16, 17 minutes. So we have a couple more minutes. We could just throw this out there. We always like to put in a topic of the week as well after we talk about the weather. Of course, the current weather dominated most of our discussion today, so we'll keep this last topic fairly light. You did a little bit of research for me over the past week. I think last week we were talking about leaf colors.
Yes, last week we were
Yeah.
looking at what weather is conducive for color in the trees.
Right.
And I wasn't entirely certain, so I had to do some little research on my
What'd you find out?
template, and I found out that typically during the summertime you need a wetter year,
Okay.
which we didn't really have over the summer. It's pretty dry. And you would need a cool and dry fall for the colors to emerge.
Okay.
Now, with the wet weather we're having now, that's probably going to delay the onset of the colors. And if we're going to get strong winds, they may actually knock the leaves down before the colors can emerge. But as of right now, I'd probably say that we're not going to see the colors for at least another week or two.
Okay. So a little later than usual, and maybe not as fantastic as usual because some of the leaves might be gone.
Yeah, depending on how strong these winds actually
Okay.
get over the weekend.
So might not be the most banner year for colors this year is what you're saying.
It doesn't
in
look
summary.
like
Okay.
an early onset, at least.
Okay.
We'll see what happens later on in the month, but the foliage won't be emerging till later on the month, at least.
All right. Well, there you heard it from Dr. Michael Davis. We'll see how it goes. And just real quick before we go, we didn't really talk much about winds. We said it's going to be pretty windy this weekend, but what do you think top gusts are going to be? What could we experience around here in the Kutztown area?
I would say it's probably somewhere in the 20, 30 mile
20,
per hour.
30.
We might get close to 40,
Okay.
but I'd probably go 20, 30.
And key times for that? I mean, right now when we're recording this show on Friday morning, it's kind of calm out there. When will we see the wind start cranking?
I would probably say sometime around Saturday, Sunday, maybe leading into Monday.
Okay. And with the grounds being wet and some, older trees, we could see some limbs come down and stuff like that. So
Be careful out there.
Be careful out there. Okay. So maybe just a good weekend to hang around or see a concert or do something, movie or whatever, one of those type weekends.
Yes.
It's fall. So
Sounds like it.
You got to expect. All right. Well, Dr. Michael Davis, thanks so much. It's been a fun week, and we'll reconvene heads again next Friday and see where the past week took us.
Sounds good.
All right.